He's a member of the Iowa State University Hall of Fame. Went from an undrafted free agent in 1984 with the Atlanta Falcons to their starting quarterback in year 2. And in his 6-year career, he played with and against some of the most iconic names in NFL history. Dave Archer and I have been friends for over 40 years. I recently had a chance to sit down with him as he recounted stories from his NFL career and playing quarterback back in the 80s and 90s, which is old school NFL. Plus, there's a couple of tales of our escapades when we were in college. This is my full interview with former NFL quarterback and current Atlanta Falcons radio announcer, Dave Archer. What are you doing nowadays? I mean, you're announcing for the Falcons, and you're doing some ACC games?
I was doing some ACC games. I've actually shifted gears on that. I've been doing the Atlanta Falcons now 20 years. It's incredible. Yeah. Had a chance to be the color analyst on the Atlanta Falcon Radio Network for the last 20 seasons. Intermittently, during that same 20-year stretch, I called ACC and SEC games for a local entity here, Jefferson Pilot, Raycom Sports, here in the South. To call both those conferences, which was a ton of fun, and going to those different venues, and you know what that's all about, the college atmosphere and stuff. I since have shifted gears after 15 straight years of being gone Friday through Sunday through the fall. I decided, it'd be kind of nice to be home maybe half that time, because the Falcons are only on the road half the time. So I dispensed of doing the games. I still get asked from time to time to do a game here or there. But now I'm doing a Sirius XM radio show that's college-oriented, Big 12 radio, XM 375, and I've been doing that for the last 5 years. And cool. My partner, what's really cool, I can do it from my house. My partner's in Dallas. Our producers are in D.C. So modern abilities is phenomenal. But we do a radio show that centers around Big 12 conference, college athletics in general. We'll sprinkle some pro stuff in. But it's pretty much, in each channel, each college Power 5, or now we're at the Power 4, but each conference has their own channel, and I've been fortunate to be a part of that. And they keep letting me come back, so I keep taking up the opportunity.
Got them fooled, huh?
Yeah, that's what we do, right? Head fake them. Just got to head fake.
Right, exactly. Hey, so you were doing some SEC games.
Mm-hmm.
What was the wildest wildest venue?
Yeah, the best venue, and that's a hard one too. It's a great question. Obviously, LSU's is right near the top. LSU is incredibly good place to go. It's a venue that it is different during the daytime than it is at night, which is unbelievable.
Right.
But Georgia doesn't take a backseat to anybody. Florida's is really good. Tennessee is outstanding. It's really difficult, Keith, to find a place in the SEC that you don't like. Maybe Vanderbilt, and Vanderbilt Stadium full of the other team's fans, so it ends up being like a home game for the visiting team. So it's still raucous when you go there. I didn't get a chance to go to A&M now that they're part of the SEC. That's, from what I understand, Kyle Field is off the chain as well. But it was fun to do games in the SEC, no question.
What about the nightlife? Like, did you get to sample Ole Miss?
Unbelievable, dude. How about you nailing the number one venue when it comes to nightlife and or the eye candy, if you will. If we can go there. I was told that you will not believe the girls at Ole Miss. And I don't want this to come across as the old man syndrome. Look at that dirty old man thing here. But in all actuality, if you were just on the surface glancing around, there was nothing less than a 9 walking the streets at Ole Miss. It was unbelievable. But a cool venue there because they have the Grove, which is a place where they tailgate before they go to the stadium, which most places have their spots to go hang out, drink a couple of beers or 10, and then go into the game. And So
Right.
fun place to go, no question.
Head coach, who was the biggest beauty?
You know, a lot of people would think, okay, Nick Saban was a problem potentially for you. I didn't think Nick was bad at all. I thought that, but you only got 20 minutes. They
Yeah.
said that the SID'd come in and say you got 20 minutes with Nick, and it would be 20 minutes. Urban
Right.
Meyer was very similar. Urban was now Urban's gotten kind of a bad rep here over the last, what he did with Jacksonville, and
Yeah.
does he have some health issues? Does he not have health issues? Why is he still coaching? Why is he back coaching?
Right.
He was genuinely extremely nice.
Yeah.
But you got 20 minutes. That was it. Get 20 minutes with Urban for your production meeting, and then you're out.
Yeah.
I thought Ed Ogeron was probably the guy that was the home run guy.
Right.
He's down there, every sentence finished with "Go Tigers."
Right. Right.
Dave, great to have you in the building. We feel like our team's pretty good. Go Tigers. We know we got a good quarterback. We got two good quarterbacks really on this team. Go Tigers. Everything finished with a "Go Tigers." It was funny.
Right. That's cool, man. That is really cool. Yeah, Shailen went to a Tide game, and in fact, it was Tide Auburn.
Oh,
And,
really? Wow.
Yeah,
That's
I'm
as big as it gets now.
That's what I tried to explain to her. I said, you better soak it in because that's big time. Big time. You're very fortunate to be able to do that. I mean, that's cool football down there in the South.
Well, they're cathedrals. There's no question about it. What was it? Keith Jackson said, "Whoa, boy! When you talk about college football, you talk about Auburn and Alabama."
Yep, that's right. Okay, so let's go now. Let's talk about your playing career. So you come out of Iowa State, and
You just got to discount Snow Junior College. You're just going to throw Joe Snow Junior College under the bus and not give me any sniff there. While you were at Idaho State, I was down at Snow.
well, let's talk about it then if you want to. Let's talk about Snow College. When I first met your buddy, Dave Vandegrift, another product of Snow College, the first thing out of my mouth to him was, "So you're Mormon, huh?" And the look on his face said it all. And that was the first time that I realized that not everybody at Snow College was LDS.
No, that's true, and it's a fine school, and obviously named after Professor Snow down there, and an LDS member, and nothing against any of that. But I was afforded the opportunity to come down there and play ball for Bill Kelly my sophomore year, Dave Arslanian my freshman year. But my sophomore year was the year that things took off for me. I always wanted to play D1 football if I could. Didn't know if I was going to be able to. I came from a little tiny high school in southeastern Idaho, Soda Springs High School. I had 70 kids in my graduating class. Got an opportunity to go to Snow to play. Went down there, kind of sat and watched the first year, and then won the job my second year as a sophomore. We changed offenses to the BYU offense, which was that split back, throw the football virtually every down, kind of what Jim McMahon was running, right? And
gotta love it.
It was fun. We went to a bowl game. We finished fourth in the country, destroyed this team from Texas in a bowl game. And that's ultimately what got me my opportunity to get recruited. LSU came calling, Iowa State, Texas. So I had a number of name brand schools come calling, but there was one thing that all of them had that they wanted to do that Iowa State didn't want to do. They wanted to redshirt me, and I did not want to redshirt. I don't know that I had the foresight to know that I only had 2 years of eligibility left, but I didn't want to sit and allow someone to get a foothold. Let me go in, win the job. And so I went to Iowa State. They did not have an incumbent returning. There was a backup quarterback that was there that was talented. He was a parade All-American, but I beat him out, and I won the job. And I had a chance to play 2 seasons there. And as it turns out, my fourth college coach came in my senior year. I had 4 coaches through 2 at Snow and 2 at Iowa State. And Jim Kreiner, outstanding coach at Boise State, who had a really good career there, got the head job at Iowa State. And we changed offenses, ironically enough, to a BYU style, throw the football, split back offense. Back in those days, that was the way to go. And we set all sorts of records throwing the ball. And I got a couple opportunities to go to the league and made that work. So that's kind of the history of the college game.
Yeah, cool. So that's the old Big 8.
It was. Yeah, it
Yeah.
was. Many called it the Big Two Little Six, is what they
Right.
called it, with Oklahoma, Nebraska kind of owning the conference, and all
Right.
the rest of us, crashing against that rock and breaking, while those two went to the Orange Bowl every year.
So, what was your experience playing the Sooners? Those guys were just scary.
Well, yeah, you're talking about, and you know this, Keith. You in every guy was a draft pick.
Right.
And I remember my senior year, we played them. Tony Casillas was the nose tackle. He was a first-round draft pick for the Falcons the following year. The year we played him, Ricky Bryan was our first-round draft pick, but the Falcons, he was a defensive end. Scott Case,
Yeah.
their free safety, was a second-round draft pick for the Falcons. Thomas Benson, Jackie Shipp, Dwight Drain. You can go down the list of guys. Shipp was a number one pick for the Dolphins. Drain was a number one pick for the Bills. That's who you played. And
Yeah.
it was like beating your head against a rock. It really was. You couldn't move them. You couldn't outrun them. And so you just tried to survive. But, yeah, they beat the hell out of us my senior year.
Did you play them in Norman?
We did. My senior year,
Yeah.
played them in Norman. My junior year, we had a chance. That was the year that they changed to an I formation. They went a little – Barry Switzer decided to experiment a little bit and got away from the wishbone. They had a guy named Marcus Dupree playing running back.
Yeah,
He
I
was
think I
a
remember
gigantic
him.
human. He looked like a linebacker playing running back in those days. He was about 6'2", and about 235 pounds, ran 4'4". And so good luck trying to tackle that guy, let alone catch him
Right.
to try to get him to the ground. But we actually played them pretty good in Ames. They beat us 13-3 or 13-7, something along those lines.
Yeah.
I think I had a couple throws in the end zone to potentially get it tied, but they ended up winning the game. But we played them pretty close.
Yeah. What was is Ames a good college town? Was it back then when you were there?
Yeah, really good college town. It's really the population doubles in Ames, Iowa, when school's in session.
Yeah.
It's a town of about 20 to 25,000 people, and you get about 25 or 30,000 students come in, and you could hear the music rise on a Friday afternoon when those students who've been grinding in engineering classes and all the type of veterinarian classes, a tremendous veterinarian school, engineering school. They wanted to let some steam off, and that music volume would turn up about 3 o'clock in the afternoon. It was time to drink a beer or two.
Yep. Or two.
Or
Okay.
10.
So then you go into the NFL as a undrafted free agent.
Mm-hmm.
Atlanta Falcons.
That's correct.
Tell me about the day and time and moment that you knew you'd made the club.
Wow. It's a great moment. I got a chance to play in my first preseason game. It was in the Metrodome in Minnesota. It was the first preseason game of the year. And I was inserted middle of the second quarter. Steve Bartkowski at the time, long time, one of the great quarterbacks, certainly in Falcon history. He comes out of the game. That was back when the starter actually played in the preseason games and played in the first game, as it turns out. So I came in the second quarter, and we moved the ball down the field. I completed, I think, 3 passes, and we moved it down and kicked a field goal, and I was out. I got one drive. That was my one opportunity. Went down, scored. I think I went 2 for 3 in the drive, hit Billy White Shoes Johnson on a little play that got us in field goal range. So felt pretty good about that moment. Didn't play in the second game. So I thought, geez, I mean, there it goes. That was my one moment. I had one drive against the Vikings in the preseason. In the third game, we played Tampa here in Atlanta, and I was given a quarter of play. And I went in and did kind of like what I did my senior year. We lit it up. I went 9 of 11 for about 120 yards and threw about a 25 or 30-yard touchdown pass. I'll never forget it. Willie Curran, kid out of UCLA. I'll never forget his name. Went down the sideline, a little fade route, found him for a touchdown. And when I got in the locker room, Dan Henning, who was the head coach, walked by me, and turned around and said, "Have you found a place to live yet?"
Ooh.
That way, I mean, I sense chills down my back to this day.
Yeah, I bet.
And you know as well as I do, Keith, we're talking 1984 now. There are no cell phones to pick up to call anybody.
Right.
I'm searching for a payphone. I got to call my dad. I got to call my dad. Right.
Right.
And I did, and he was crying on the other end. So it's
Oh,
cool.
I bet. Man, that's
It was
cool.
really a cool moment. Yeah, no question.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow, that's cool.
No, it's,
So
it's something you don't forget. And just telling you that story, I hadn't relived it for a while, so I appreciate you letting me do that. I got goosebumps on my arm.
So, Atlanta overall, decent experience for you. I mean, you're in the show. That's got to be pretty sweet. Overall,
Yeah,
was it pretty good?
No question about it. I mean, I came in here as an undrafted free agent, as you said. Nobody gave me a chance, which is kind
Yeah.
of the way most of my career was. So that was the immediate chip on the shoulder built there. So you say, okay, well, let me show you what I can do. And fortunately,
Right.
I was able to do some of that. Now, to the extent that I wanted to, probably a little disappointing in that. But you can't be disappointed in having a chance, like you said, to play in the show,
Yeah.
to start in this league. I was a starter in this league, and to be able to do those kind of things and line up alongside some of the best players that ever played in this franchise's history, but certainly line up against guys like Reggie White and Lawrence
Right.
Taylor and those kind of guys to go head to head with those guys. It was fun. I mean, I played against that 85 Bear defense. We played them in Chicago, and it was about 22 degrees in Chicago on that late November day, and you could hear John Facenda's voice in the background and NFL
Yeah.
film saying it was going to be a rough day for the young man from Soda Springs, Idaho, because they beat the living hell out of me in that game. They just
Yeah.
but I was on the field with Mike Singletary and Dan Hampton and Richard
Yeah.
Dent and all those guys. So it was fun.
So when you're lining up against the Giants and you come to the line of scrimmage and you put your hands under center, you stealing some sideways glances out to number 56 out there on the edge.
There's no question about it. And just kind of glancing back to remind the back, that's your guy.
That's
and,
right.
and maybe even a fan call for the tackle so he could fan out and help him as well. The one
Exactly.
story I'll remember about legendary player Reggie White, we played Philly here in Atlanta. We had gotten off to a really good start. We were 4-0. It was the best start in Falcon history. And we got the Eagles. Buddy Ryan had just taken over after having coached that 85 Bear defense. He took over as their head coach. Well, he had a talented crew on the defensive side, and they shifted gears from a 4-3 to the 46 the 46 defense, which is what he ran in Chicago. And that put Reggie in a wide 9 out on my left side, or lined up against our left tackle, based on the film that I'd watched. And so we had studied that, and we knew we had to get Reggie blocked. And so we were going to dedicate 2 players, either motion a tight end across and close that side off and block him with the tackle and tight end, or we were going to hard chip him with the running back. And I had a 240-pound running back in Gerald Riggs. So I came to the line of scrimmage the first play of the game. We'd gotten the ball in the opening kickoff. And I came to the line of scrimmage, and here's Sirius, the 46 lineup. So I craned my head outside to look to see if Reggie was lined up in that wide 9 technique. He wasn't there. I thought, I start scanning, where is he? Is he on the sideline? Is he standing next to Buddy Ryan? Where is he? All of a sudden I look down. He's lined up over the center, Keith, dead over the center. We had no tape on Reggie White lined up over the center.
Yeah.
Well, I thought, okay, we're trying to block him with 2 guys. He's wedged in now. We've got him hemmed in where I'm going to get hats on him. I'm no problem. Went through the snap count. I had a single high safety. I had double seams. I'm going to touch him down the field with a pass in the seam.
Right.
I take my first step. Reggie White hits the center, who was a 6'5", 270-pound guy out of Georgia. His head hit my left shoulder, and Reggie tackled me in the center on the first play of the game.
Yeah.
And from that point on, I got sacked 8 times in the game, and they shut us out. It was unbelievable.
They keep him at nose the whole time?
No, they moved him back outside, but it was just, where is he? And Wayne Radloff, who was my center out of Georgia, he was a bigger kid than Jeff Van Note had been. He just got destroyed on that play. So that's one of the memories I remember from the great one, Reggie White. God rest his soul. I got a chance to play with Reggie in Philly. He was a gentle giant, but he was a problem for offensive tackles.
Oh, yeah. Now, those are the days when you're not in the gun, right?
No.
You're right there under center. You can smell their breath and see their eyes spinning, snot bubbles, and all that shit. That's scary.
That's exactly right. Yeah, no gun. Yeah, I would have loved to have lobbied for the gun right there, but no gun.
Okay, so you moved to Miami in '88, the Dolphins, correct?
I did. Went down there as a free agent. Yep, sure did.
Don Shula. Tell me about Don Shula.
Yeah, Don Shula was one of those guys that when he walked in the room, just kind of commanded attention. Even though we're talking about 1988 or whatever, he still was the guy. This was the preeminent coach in most people's minds. We had him. We had Bill Walsh probably would be in that category. But when Don walked in, I'm sitting next to Dan Marino, and
Right.
so I'm not sure which one to be more in awe of, Dan Marino or Don Shula. And then you look over here, and the Marx brothers, Duper and Clayton, are lined up over here, standing over here, and you're thinking, what the hell am I doing in this room?
Yeah.
Let alone sitting and listening to Shula. Shula was a good X's and O's guy, believe it or not. I don't know how much you've looked back at him and his coaching career at Baltimore and all the things he did there. But he was a guy that was very cerebral there. And then, of course, his son, Mike Shula and Dave Shula went on to coach as well. But Dave had taken over the offensive coordinator job for the Dolphins at the time.
Yeah.
And they had committed a cardinal error, a cardinal sin. They had gotten rid of Don Strock, who was the godfather to Dan Marino, two of Dan Marino's children.
Ooh.
Marino revered Don Strock.
Yeah.
He called him the Stroker. He loved him. He was his guy. When he came to the sidelines, who he talked to, and they elevated Dave Shula to be the offensive coordinator. And it was comical during camp how Marino he just had no respect for Dave Shula, and there were so many things that went on. But I had a lot of respect for Don, his dad, because he did have a lot of knowledge that I didn't. I thought he was more of a figurehead, but he knew his X's and O's.
Yeah. Talk to me about Marino, the man.
Yeah, Danny was a good guy. I enjoyed being around him. He was very accommodating to me, even though he didn't need to be. He was the man at that time. I mean, he came in a year before I did in the league, so we were very similar in age. I was just a year younger than he was, but he was much more accomplished than I was, even though I'd been a starter in Atlanta. He was very willing to share information, talk me through things. So I thought that was cool about him. One story, I remember we had a rookie corner from BYU, I think, that had come to camp, and Marino would just abuse guys in practice. I mean, he would challenge them verbally, challenge them physically, and he had Clayton lined up over there, and they had some kind of signal they'd worked out, and Clayton did a little stop and go, and he throws it over the top of this kid. And Marino starts walking towards this kid. This kid's coming back to the defensive huddle, and Marino's now walking towards him. He goes, "You're like a credit card. I break you. I use you anytime I want to." I'm just standing there with my mouth open going, is this really happening? It was classic. And, Duper and Clayton are signing autographs. They would run, how team period goes. You got 25 plays in a team period practice. And they were rapid fire. They had two huddles going, and they're rapid firing. Clayton would run down, catch a ball, and walk back. Mostly they want you to hustle back, get back in the huddle. He'd walk back. He'd stop along the sideline. Here's tons of Miami fans. He's signing autographs. He would probably run 4 of the 25 team plays. That's all he'd get in because he was signing autographs the whole time. He and Duper were rock stars, man.
Yeah, I bet. Wow. The old guys out there that saw Marino play in real time, they know what's up. You saw him in real time in person. Talk to me about his skills, just his skills in throwing the rock. I mean, that guy was unbelievable throwing the ball.
Yeah, the release is not something you'd probably, and you coached at a high level and coached some good quarterbacks. It's not the release you're going to teach, right? You want people to get the ball out as quickly as he did.
Yeah.
But his ability, where he threw it from, had a little bit of Phillip Rivers in it. Phillip Rivers didn't have the didn't seem to get the ball out as quickly as Danny did, but they had a similar release. It was a slower, short arm release.
Short arm, yeah.
But he had a big arm for a short release like he had. his understanding, his diagnosis at the line of scrimmage was outstanding. He could find those matchups that he wanted. You know, he had Bruce Hardy as a tight end, so he would isolate Bruce Hardy from time to time on a safety, strong safety, or a linebacker. He had those two guys, the Marks brothers. Nat Moore was there. I mean, there was a bunch of guys that he could get the rock to, so he had a lot of talent around him. But his ability to diagnose at the line of scrimmage and to get it out. He really good at the line of scrimmage and changing plays too. That was back when that art was still part of the mix. Where you actually audibled off. You changed things to the line. Now it's, you know as well as I, it's check with me stuff, or somebody, you know, the guy's talking to you in your ear and he's telling you to change the play, or this is coming. Not in those days.
Okay, so then you go over to the Skins, Washington Redskins, correct?
I did. I went to Washington. The Miami thing didn't work out. I was released in camp, so didn't end up going there. So ended up in Miami, or in Washington. As it turns out, Mark Rippon, who ended up being a really good friend, had an appendicitis. Went down with appendicitis, or either he or Doug Williams went down with appendicitis. I think it was Doug Williams went down with the appendicitis. That's who it was. And Mark became the head guy, or became the starter. And they needed someone to come in and back up Mark. So I came in because I knew the system. That Washington system, came in and served as his backup in Washington. Actually got in. I got in late in the Cardinal game. I think we went down and scored a touchdown or something like that late in the Cardinal game. But I didn't really play much there. But got a chance to see all the monuments there. I had never done that before. That was cool. Yeah,
Joe Gibbs.
Yeah, Joe, what a fine human being he is. Joe was the old school guy, Keith. You would show up on a Wednesday, you know, you might have a lift or something on Monday, and then Tuesday's the day off the players, so nobody's in there. And then Wednesday you come in for the first day of game plan for the week. Mm-hmm. Joe had been in his office since Sunday night. He stayed the night Sunday night, stayed the night Monday night, stayed the night Tuesday night. And you would come in, and his hair is standing up. He's got, you know, shirt collars up. He's looking out of one eye.
Right.
But he had spent those 3 nights and the 2 days putting a game plan together that would fit the team you were going to play.
Right.
And it was unbelievable because we had Gary Clark, we had Art Monk, and Ricky Sanders. Those were the 3 receivers. And the running back was Kelvin Bryant. You talk about talent and guys that could make plays. So he had designed he would just come up with a word. Let's say flip right. So flip right meant you lined up in a slot with a tight end and an H-back to the right, the slot to the left, and you motioned across the balance. That would just be called flip right. And you had to remember that. Okay, this week is flip right. And if you flipped it over, obviously flip left. And he would have, out of that formation, he would have 4 ways to get Ricky, Art, and Gary the ball. Mm-hmm. And probably Kelvin as well. And then he would go to another formation, and he'd almost create an offense from a protection and formation standpoint each week we played. And it was incredible the time he spent in his chalkboard. He had 3 boards and it was flipped, you know, whiteboards. He'd flipped upside down and flipped back and forth. And he'd invite all the receivers, all the running backs, and all the tight ends and the quarterbacks into his office. We'd be sitting on his desk, be sitting on shelves, stacks of books. We'd all be crowded into this office, and he'd go over. That would be the first introduction on a Wednesday morning of what he'd come up with those 3 days. Incredible. But as nice a human being as you could possibly ever talk to.
Okay, so let's move to San Diego now. 1989, Chargers. You hook up with Dan Henning again?
Dan gave me an opportunity to come out to San Diego. Been a starter for him, obviously, here in Atlanta. It was kind of a wide open job at the time. Mark Malone was out there, the former Steeler. Yep. And I had gone out there, and about halfway through the 89 camp, they make a deal to trade for Jim McMahon.
Right.
Mac had kind of run the gambit in Chicago, and so he was ready to move on. I think they were ready to move on from him. He'd been injured quite a bit. Yeah. So he came to San Diego. As it turns out, Mac and I were really good friends. So It was kind of cool to hang out with him, but it also meant that I wasn't going to get on the field because they had they dropped quite a bit of money in Mac's pocket to bring him out there. So
Yeah.
he ends up being the starter, and I backed him up that year in '89, and it was, kind of a blasé year as far as wins and losses. We had a ton of fun with one another, had a few beers together and stuff like that. There's a lot of stories around that, but
Okay, so me and you have talked about McMahon before. You've given me some stories. Give me your best Jim McMahon story.
well, some of it I'm not sure we can. We certainly mixed company can't hear a lot of this stuff.
You use your best discretion on this.
Okay, well, I'm not sure we can tell any Mac stories without diving into it too deep. I remember. I'll try to clean this one up because this was one of the funniest ones. But Mac he was always doing something that was counterproductive in the coaches' minds or didn't really necessarily have anything to do with football. And we were in the locker room getting ready to head out and we're 7 minutes from kickoff. And so everybody in Philly, we're all sitting around our lockers, okay? And so there's Reggie White and Seth Joyner and Clyde Simmons and Randall Cunningham and Keith Byers. We're all sitting in there, and all of a sudden Mac starts kind of squirming around on his chair. And he gets up. And now you got to picture Mac now. He's got 2 Lenox Hill knee braces on. The old, it's like Tin Man type stuff that you couldn't move, and he's got those on his knee. He walks over. Now he's got his pants up, full pads, shoulder pads on. He pulls his pants down and then pulls the girdle he's got underneath down as well, okay, down around his ankles. Now, he's still got his shoulder pads, his jersey on. Now, his pants are down around his ankles. Now, all the guys are watching him, are looking at him. He reaches into this hamper and pulls out this towel, and he starts wiping his rear end with the towel. And everybody's going, oh, God. He goes, yeah, it's a little swampy, boys. And he throws the towel back in the bin. And so when he reaches down to pick up his pants and pull his pants up, he's looking between his legs. His rear end is facing the coach's locker room. And all of a sudden the door bursts open, and here comes the coaches out of the locker room, right? And the first guy out is the defensive line coach, and he was the D-line coach in Chicago at the same. So he knew him really well. He says, "Hey, Dale, do I have anything in my rear end?" And he's looking right at his butt. And I was hearing, "Get your GD pants on, McMahon." And somebody starts, the place just broke up laughing. That was Mac to a T. There was so many moments like that he just cracked you up. Of course, we went out, and that vaunted defense for Philly, I think, shut the Cardinals out after watching all that go on. But that's just the tip of the iceberg of stuff with Mac. He's hilarious.
Yeah. So you were with him at Philly and Randall Cunningham.
Yeah. RC, talented dude now. You talk about a big-time arm, Keith. He could throw it. He had a long wind-up, kind of a buggy whip type wind-up. But, man, did the ball explode out of his hands. It was one of the best arms that I was ever around. He just exploded the ball out of his hand. He could roll left. There's a play where he makes against Buffalo. I think it ends up being like a 90-yard touchdown, but he scrambles out of the pocket, is in the end zone, and kind of gets just beyond the goal line and hits Fred Barnett down the middle of the field on a post route, and it's just a bomb. You couldn't believe somebody threw the ball that far.
Yeah,
but a tremendous athlete. He was all of that. Just the intricacies of the game. He didn't really study. He wasn't necessarily a student of the game. He just got away with on his athleticism.
Yeah, and that was Richie Kotite, right?
Rich Kotite, piece of work. Yeah, Richie Kotite. Yeah, he was a piece of work. He had a guy. His bowling buddy held his cord for his headset. That's no lie. This guy wasn't even on the staff. He was this guy he bowled with.
Oh yeah, that's big time football right there. So Arch, when you were in the NFL, who was the best QB you saw? Best QB.
Well, I think it's, for me, probably it'd be between 2 guys. It would be Joe Montana in San Francisco or John Elway in Denver.
Yeah.
And they were 2 guys that Montana was kind of that cerebral guy, all athletic enough and moved around, didn't have a big arm. The ball came out on time. He threw guys open.
Yep.
And you remember Elway. Elway was this big strapping athlete out of Stanford that could throw the ball through a brick wall. And sometimes he did throw the ball through his receivers, but he would scramble around, run through guys, and make these unbelievable throws. But those two guys were big time.
Yeah. I talked to Dave Craig and I asked him the same question, and he didn't even bat an eyelash. John Elway, by far, is the best he ever saw. So, yeah. Wow. Okay. So, what's your take now on the NFL? Current state of the NFL. What do you think?
Wow. It's obviously a very corporate, run situation. Everybody's trying to emulate it because it just keeps making money. Mm-hmm. The people, the ambassadors for this place, the caretakers for the NFL have done an unbelievable job of building this into this unbelievable juggernaut. You keep seeing salaries go up. You keep seeing salary caps go up. You keep seeing TV revenues going up, and you think, oh, there's got to be at some point there's a line right there where you can't go past. I mean, we just had Josh Allen, the defensive end for the Jacksonville Jaguars, just signed a $150 million deal, $88 million guaranteed. Those were numbers that quarterbacks you didn't even realize as a quarterback until here about 10 years ago. Now they're paying offensive tackles, corners, wide receivers, defensive ends. So the money-making machine that it is phenomenal. Their ability to maximize moments, and it seems like 12 months a year. Maybe you get a downtime in June, but think about, you'll get a soft schedule launch with the preseason games. And then you'll get, like, there was an announcement that the two teams are going to play in Brazil this year. The Eagles and the Packers are going to play in Brazil, okay? So that just tells you the notoriety around the world, not just the United States. Yeah. Then you get the draft. Then all the lead up to the draft. You got the combine before that. Then the draft. And then you get the actual schedule release in May. And everybody's just fawning over each other. It's a schedule release. Everybody knows who everybody's playing. It's just a matter of when you play, but still there's this magnetism towards it. Then you get a little bit of a downtime in June, then here you go. We're going to camp in July, and it's just it's unbelievable how well they maximize the business part of it. The game, Keith, the game is a fast-paced game. It's a game I know you'd love. I know you like fast-paced stuff. The way you coached and all that kind of stuff. Your teams were fast-paced. You'd love coaching now in the league. The defenses are hamstrung significantly. I mean, we just got the rule. We just got the rule that they've disallowed the hip drop, which that'll be interesting to see how subjective that's refereed. But you can't jam. You can't jam receivers around 5, and there's illegal contact. There's all sorts of. It's an offensive game. There's no question about it. But it's a fast-paced game. I think the tackling is brutal in the National Football League because, frankly, you can't hit guys anywhere.
Right.
And none of these guys want to get concussions because now we know what's going on with some of that information that's come out with concussions. And thankfully we do, and that we can protect some of these guys. But it's a different game than we played 20 years ago. There's no question about that from a schematic standpoint, speed standpoint, and the players have continued to evolve. We knew they would. But I think it's still unbelievably popular, and it's probably in a good spot.
You personally, would you rather play when you played when quarterbacks got hit, or would you rather play today where they're protected more?
Are you actually
That's a nice way of saying that.
I think from a standpoint of the physicality of the game, I would love to have played now. I think there are nuances and rules that only guys that were before their time, and you did some of this, some of the bubble screen stuff, some of the swing screen stuff, some of the, along the line of scrimmage, behind the line of scrimmage. You did a really good job of taking advantage of some of that I don't think any really people foresaw at that time. You were before your time when it came to that. That's now become the norm. The RPO stuff. And what they're kind of allowing linemen to kind of fudge on that and be downfield a step or two. And how do you, as a linebacker, how do you read that? I got an offensive guard that's coming off at me, and he's about a step or two down the field. I've got to go engage him to try to stop this run. Now the ball's pulled out, and they're throwing behind me to a slant route. Yeah. So it's incredible. I would love to play in this era of offensive football, and certainly love to play with the way they're protecting the guys throwing it.
Yeah. Who do you like quarterback-wise in the game today?
Well, it's hard not to like the guy that's won the last 2 Super Bowls. I mean, the thing that's cool about him, Keith, and I'm sure you appreciate this too, is he still has a little riverboat gambler in him. There's a little bit of a fly by your seat of your pants type stuff. Yeah. It's not all by design. He still does stuff that you look back on and you go, wow, that looked like Montana. Wow, that looked like Elway. Some of the things those guys used to do. Yeah. So it's hard not to like him. I like how competitive Josh Allen is in Buffalo. I think he's incredibly intense. The guy that I think is, if he can stay healthy, who seems to be the next Aaron Rodgers, and Aaron's going to be a Hall of Famer, and regardless of what his personality is and how much time he spends in a cave and all that kind of stuff and what grass seeds he's eating. Right. Guy, extremely talented, might be the most talented passer ever if you watch him play the game and his ability to throw the ball off platform and all those kind of things. Yeah. Joe Burrow is the same guy, but he can't stay on the field. He can't stay healthy. Yeah. I love watching him play as well. Yeah.
Man, how about that system and weapons he had at LSU that last year?
Oh my goodness.
Those guys were on a different planet.
Yeah, they were all pros. I mean, he had a bunch of pros playing with him. Who knew? But I guess Ojan knew. Go Tigers.
Okay, let's move to college football. The state of the game. Talk to me. Well, let me just go ahead, and then I'm gonna let's just, the elephant in the room, the portal, and the NIL.
Well, you went right where I was going to go. Old school in me, it's ruining the game. Okay, I think. Yes, because it's made the game so transient now, not just from a player standpoint, but now from a team standpoint. This whole shuffle of conferences and where's my bag of money? Where can I get the biggest bag of money? That's what it's become. This has become a major money grab, and I don't know that I can blame them. I think they're trying to mirror the National Football League without calling themselves NFL Junior. Right. But I mean, look at it. I mean, from NIL is pay for play. That's what it is. They're pay for play. You've got the transfer portal is free agency. Yep. You've got, now you're going to go to a 12-team playoff. I mean, look what the NFL's done. Now they're talking about, well, I don't know if 12 is enough. Maybe 14 is a better deal. Right. For the NFL is, where they expanded now and they put in an additional team. So now you have the 14 teams in the playoffs. Yeah. They're going to come a point in time, Keith, where they're going to have to legislation. They've completely hamstrung and, castrated the NCAA. They can't do anything without being sued now. Yeah. Because it's an infringement of somebody's rights or whatever. So you got to have, and all these coaches are calling for a governing body. We need somebody. Well, you're not allowing the group that you actually, coalesced with these meetings and created these rules. You're not letting them enforce any of the rules because these guys are suing, and so something's got to happen here. And I think that's why you're seeing, I think Nick Saban is a guy that would be a good guy to potentially get in there. Maybe he could ride the horse for both sides a little bit, but I don't know who it is. But they need to have some czar, if you will. Charlie Baker's not going to be able to get it done. They're not going to let the NCAA do it.
Just the fact that Saban walked away from Alabama, that I think tells you all you need to know about the state of college football. And I look at this from a coaching standpoint. Obviously I was a player too, but from a coaching standpoint, it's brutal now. It's brutal. That's why Chip Kelly gets out of the head coach to go be an OC and just coach football. And Nick Saban walks away. He's disgusted with the whole thing. I mean, we're going to see more coaches leave the head coaching position to go be assistants somewhere just to coach football, Crazy.
I've had 3 different coordinators that I know in college football. They're coordinators at the major college level that called me when the Falcons decided to change coaches and Raheem Morris got the head job here in Atlanta when Arthur Smith would let go, calling me, asking me if I could put in a good word for them just to get an interview as a position coach.
Yeah.
Because of what's going on in college football. So that,
yeah,
to me, what you just said and what I've been able to, ascertain from some of these coaches, there's guys that would love to get out of that realm. And I don't think you have to go very far, without mentioning the likes of Jay Wright, the Villanova head basketball coach. Jay Wright's a young man, but it's a hell of a lot easier for him to sit on that desk and talk about the NCAA tournament than it is to try to negotiate NIL deals and
right.
keep Villanova viable in college basketball. And that's, and I'd be willing to bet you that Coach K, he may not admit this, but I don't think it helped, with Coach K leaving. So I think there's a lot going on, not just in football, but also across the major college sports, especially football and basketball.
Can you imagine being a head D1 football coach and that recruiting grind that you have, which is 365, 24/7, to get guys on your campus, and then you have to keep recruiting them to stay on your campus? Yeah. That is nuts.
Well, and the inability for them to adjudicate the tampering problem that you've got, you've got guys calling players, and I know 2 or 3 instances of guys personally that were called by other places, and they weren't even in the portal. You're supposed to be in the portal before you can talk to the players. You got handshakes. Hey, if anything goes wrong, give me a call. That kind of stuff as you're shaking hands after a game. It's crazy.
Well, I kind of had a throwaway line on one of my podcasts a while ago where I said, you remember the SMU deal in the 80s? You haven't seen anything yet. Buckle up, because this is the wild, wild west.
No question. Yeah, the SMU deal is G-rated video right now. Right. It's not even PG based on what we're seeing now with what's going on with some of these deals that we don't know anything about. Well,
I just consider myself lucky, and I'm sure you do too, that we played college football when we did.
No question about it. No question about it. I think there was still a freshness to it, maybe an amateurism to it, certainly. And I understand there's so much money in the game now that why shouldn't those that are playing get a piece of it? Sometimes I wonder why are we not these guys aren't paying their way to school. A lot of these schools are somewhere between $25,000 to $50,000 a semester to go to school, but we're just discounting that. Oh, you got a scholarship. That's money that the school is providing, that opportunity, room and board and all that kind of stuff to get an education for free. Yeah. And that's not part of the deal. That's not talked about. It's just, what kind of NIL deal can I get? Well, if we're going to go to that, let's just get rid of the school part of it. Let's make it, the junior NFL and just pay them to play, because that's the direction we're going in.
That's right. Okay, let's talk about the draft real quick. Now, you got 5 guys, 5 quarterbacks that are going to go in the first round. Who do you like?
Yeah. You like 5 in the first round? I know there's a lot of conversation about 5.
Well, see, who's the guy that you don't think's a first rounder? Penix?
Well, I'm still, a lot of people like J.J. McCarthy, and I'm still kind of, really? He really wasn't. Was he counted on at Michigan to make a bunch of plays? I mean, they ran the ball down people's throats. Yeah. And as well as I do, if you can run the ball as well as they did, how good's play action off of that? Yeah. Right. I do think he had moments where he certainly was, the tip of the spear for him, certainly in some games, but not to the extent that Michael Penix was. I mean, Michael
Right.
Penix threw the ball over the yard. Are you kidding me? Were they going to Jaden Daniels, who won the Heisman Trophy? I mean, go look at the things he did to help LSU just try to win games, let alone, I think they won 9 games. They lost 3 games, and in the 3 games they lost, he threw for like 1,600 yards in the 3 games. So,
right.
I like, and I'm still, I don't know where I am on Caleb Williams yet. I think he's a talented dude. I think he can do a lot of stuff, the kind of the off-platform stuff that I mentioned with Patrick Mahomes. And I'm not comparing him to Patrick Mahomes, but he does some things similar to that. Drake May, I don't know about Drake May. I think he's got a big arm. I think he's got the biggest arm of the group. He can sling it all over the yard.
Yeah.
So I don't know who I would leave out as not a top 5, and there may be a 6th player. Bo Nix might creep in to the back end.
Yeah.
Nix, sometimes people are saying, a lot of things are saying about Nix is he was a system guy. Well, who wasn't a system guy? Right?
Exactly.
You play in a system. You're a system guy.
Right. So let me put you on this.
Who do you like?
I like Jaden Daniels. I like Michael Penix Jr. And I like J.J. McCarthy. And these are all things considered. And I'm, I've said this before, physical skills, mental skills, leadership skills, and miscellaneous. And miscellaneous is off the field, pain in the ass, distraction, dumb shit stuff.
Yeah.
I just think McCarthy checks a lot of those boxes.
I would agree with you. And I'd throw in there, I think there has to be, and this is where I hedge my bet a little bit on Drake May, in that they won games for Coach Brown, but they didn't win a championship. They didn't, they didn't put themselves. So how much value do you place on guiding a team to a championship? I think that there's something to that. A guy that wins games, wins a lot of games. McCarthy won a ton of games.
So let me put you on the spot then. You got those 5 guys in order. How you drafting them?
Wow. I'm going to go Jaden Daniels number 1. I just like the multiplicity he brings to the table. I'm a little concerned about the slightness of build. He's 6'4", about 210.
Yeah.
And the way he puts himself in harm's way, we're going to have a conversation about that when he comes in my office about what we're doing there. But I still want him to be able to create and do that stuff. He's number 1 for me. Number 2 would be Drake May, because I think he's got an NFL arm. He reminds me somewhat of Justin Herbert out of Oregon. He has a similar, seems like just a similar demeanor, very calm. Now, he's only a redshirt sophomore. He's only got 2 years of playing experience under his belt, so there's some greenness there. I'd probably go Caleb Williams 3 in that group. And then it's a toss-up for me, J.J. McCarthy, and I'd probably go Penix because of what – and see, the Penix thing, you get worried about the injury problems that he had. Now, he played in 2 different offenses, right? He played in an offense where they just exposed him like nobody's business in Indiana.
Yeah.
And then Kalen DeBoer did a great job of building receivers around him and an offensive line, the Joe Moore Award winners that didn't give up any sacks. Yeah. And the dude could sling it.
Yeah.
So I would probably, I don't know, I'd have to feel myself through the next 2. And I think Bo Nix certainly deserves a chance too. I think he's a winner and comes from a dad that understands, how you're supposed to be as a player.
Yeah. Yep. Good picks. Okay. Let's move to the last topic now. Let's talk about the good old days. You ready for this?
Yeah, sure.
So we've known each other for over 40 years, probably, right? Over 40 years.
Sure.
And I want to first start off.
We introduced you to your wife, for damn sake, for Christ's sake.
Yeah. I want to open this up with you recounting the greatest pass you ever saw on a outdoor basketball court while the commercial for 7-Up was being sung.
Well, I don't have to go too far. I think the listeners probably have a pretty good idea. But the author of that pass is the man I'm talking to, Keith Simons. You talk about a guy that had an old man game. Okay, we're talking about a guy that could not jump. He could not jump. In fact, I don't think his feet ever came off the floor. One foot was always on the floor when it came to basketball.
Yes.
But the no-look passes, if you didn't have your head on a swivel, you left the court with a bloody nose because this guy was dealing. But I've never seen a guy, and you got to explain this to me, I've never seen a guy be able to make a shot underneath the basket without jumping like you did.
Ball fakes, baby, ball fakes.
Incredible. That was fun, man. It was a lot of fun.
Actually, I could jump a little bit. I got a little side story on that court. So those rims were like 8 feet, 8.5 feet, right? So I'm a dunking machine. And this is during spring ball practice at Idaho State. It's like on a Sunday. And we're all out there hooping right in the middle of spring ball. No breakaway rims. So those rims are welded in and they're not going anywhere. So I go up for a 2-hand jam, flush it, and then I hang on the rim and swing. I come down all 8 fingers, not the thumbs, all 8 fingers from the middle knuckle to the top knuckle, the skin ripped off of all 8 fingers off of that rusty rim. And I had to go to spring ball the next day. Oh, not real smart.
Yeah, that went in the scholarship. That was not in the scholarship.
No.
You're not supposed to do that.
So
what was it? Do you remember what the name? What was the name of that place? What'd you guys call it?
I don't remember.
Did you guys call it the Garden?
Something like that, yeah.
I'll tell you you said, "Hey, you got to come check that." I had come up there in all confession here. One of my wide receivers in high school, I went to junior college with. It was a year ahead of me. He had gone to Idaho State, and he and Keith had become very close friends. Dave Vandegrift, and Dave invited me to come up to hang out with you guys. And so we had a few beers, and we decided to go play. I think it was called the Garden. And he said, "You got to see the Garden." And I thought, what is this Garden? This is a miniaturized basketball court. Had the 3-point line. It had things were cut. The keys were colored.
Yeah.
It had perfect glass backboards and rims, and it was so cool. It was just a miniaturized version of a NBA court.
Yeah.
And these guys that couldn't jump, me and Keith and everybody else, we thought we dominated the world when it went there. So it was a pretty cool spot.
Yeah, that was cool. Okay, so Lava Hot Springs, 4th of July weekend. Do you remember it? So we went, this is a resort, Lava Hot Springs, which was close to Soda Springs, was it not?
About halfway between Soda Springs and Pocatello, which is where you went to school at Idaho State.
Yeah. So this is a resort with the hot springs, and they had a few bars, and they had a big community outdoor pool.
Right.
So we showed up, me, Dave, and Dave Vandegrift, with a Nerf football. The pool's packed, and when you get those Nerf balls wet,
they're heavy.
They're about 35 pounds, and we're one of us is at one end of the pool and the other one's at the other end, and we're trying to pick people off and dome shots in the side of the head. And and then,
if I remember correctly, you had points. You were giving points out for shots, body shots, head shots. Yeah.
Yeah. And then we moved the festivities to a bar that night.
Called the Wagon Wheel.
You remember?
The Wagon Wheel. Oh, yeah.
You remember? Yeah. You started a fight with a motorcycle gang that emptied out into the street.
That is not the truth. That is not the truth.
I'm going to tell my version. It emptied out into the street. It was like one of those Hollywood movies.
It's exactly right.
And we're throwing down, and the cops roll in, and the guys that we're brawling with are on a first-name basis with the cops. And I'm going, oh, we're in trouble. I got a cop with my arms pinned behind me. He's got him pinned behind me, and he's talking to this dude. They're first-name basis, and the guy hauls off and punches me right in the grill while I'm being held by a cop. 2 guys got arrested that night, me and Vandegrift. How in the world did you not? How'd that work?
Well, it was in the story. It has multiplicity to it. But picture this place is called the Wagon Wheel, okay? And so it's a biker bar. So we, as a bunch of fresh young faces, college football players, somewhere between the ages of 19 and 20, 21, stumble into this bar after burning ourselves up at the pool. And so we're looking for some drinks and getting loud. And this biker bar is loaded. It's a packed house. The bikes are lined up out front. And I'm talking about there's about 25 bikes lined up side by side. Okay. So Vandergrift decides to grab the rear end of this one girl, and she happened to be the girlfriend of a biker that was about 6'8". And he walks over and he puts his finger right in my face, if you remember. And he goes, "Was it this guy?" And the girl's standing there. And he didn't get "guy" out of his mouth. You, Vandergrift, and this tight end we had at Snow College hit this guy at the same time. 3 fists hit this guy's face, and it was all over. He fell backwards onto the bikes, and it was a domino. The bikes went down and spilled into the street. And the Vandergrift Simon scenario, you guys, when I saw you guys, you were laying on the hood. I didn't see you get punched while being held by the cop, but you're laying on the hood of the car. If you could picture this, your legs are dangling up in the air, and they had those crowbar things they had hold of your arms with behind your back.
Yeah.
So, do you remember the litigation I did to get you guys out of jail that night? I mean, I was a Perry Mason Jr. to get you guys out of jail.
Okay, yeah. And I also remember being in the jail cell with a guy we called him Charles Manson. He was cuffed, hands cuffed, and he was trying to get his arms and hands underneath his feet. He was about 8 sheets to the wind, and that was hilarious. Yeah, so here's the best part of that whole night. So Perry Mason, you get us out, we get out. I'm staying at Vandergrift's parents' house. We go in, it's like 3 a.m. DV and Bill are in bed. We both walk into the bedroom. Dave goes, "Hey, Mom, we got arrested." And he didn't even get arrested finished. She threw the fastest jab from flat on her back and jacked him right in the mug.
Yeah, she was very less than tolerant, let's say, with anything that deviated off of her schedule. She was a tough individual. Just to let you know that the law enforcement and the judicial system is alive and well. These two showed up at the the regional courthouse in Pocatello, Idaho, and when they walked up, the judge says, "Vandergrift, what are you and Simons doing here?"
No, that's not what went down.
That's what happened. He says, "Here, sign this hat. You guys get out of here."
Okay, a couple last little things. Vandergrift's wedding in Oakland, and after a night of a cocktail or two, we're playing wiffle ball in the hallway at like 3 a.m. Now, man, I would imagine that there's some pissed off people in that hotel that night.
No question. Especially that sweet left-handed stroke that you had.
Yeah, and then the trip to Atlanta. This is one of my fondest memories ever. Was the float on the Chattahoochee.
Remember that River? Yeah,
that
do. Yeah, in fact, we got some great pictures of it. Yeah, we sure do. We hosted you and your lovely bride Stephanie, bride to be at the time, Stephanie, and you guys come and hang out with us. And there's a tradition here. There's a Now, you don't want to necessarily eat any of the fish out of the river when it gets down that far into the city, but it's a great flow trip. You can rent a tube, and there'll be as many as 600-700 tubes on the river floating down through the city of Atlanta, the northern part of the city of Atlanta, and that was a lot of fun. I believe was that around the 4th of July? It was somewhere around that time.
Yeah, it was. Now, do you remember at your house the Major League Baseball All-Star game and that drinking game we were playing? Some insane drinking game, like if they called a strike. We had to take a shot or something like
Well,
that.
it progresses, Steve. It's called a progressive drinking game. So it starts off with if the guy that comes to play gets a hit, then you drink. Okay, and so early on, it kind of starts off that way. If a guy catches a fly ball, you drink. Okay, then it progresses to you get into inning 3, and there's not a lot going on. There's not a lot of hits going on. There's not a lot of people,
Right.
maybe a lot of strikeouts. Okay, so now we progress. Okay, if this guy gets a ball thrown to him, we drink. If it's a strike, we drink. Okay, and so that gets you to another level. So once you reach the 7th inning, get close to the 7th inning stretch, if the pitcher delivers the ball towards the plate, you drink just to get the maximum out of it. So, yeah, we had a lot of fun, didn't we?
Yeah, that was fun. A long time ago. Those are the good old days. So, okay, last thing. I gotta have this from you. You ready?
Sure.
Give me your best 10 Commandments speech. Your best line. Best.
I love it. Well, you got to have both fists on each hip, right? If you're going to go to a Yule Brenner, you got to be looking off in the distance.
Yep.
Come to me no more, Moses. For the day I see your face again, you will surely die.
Well done. Okay, Arch. Well, listen, man, that was fun. And I appreciate you coming on. And
dude, great to talk to you. Great talking to you, man.
Getting the insight on your career. And
well, wow. That was probably kind of boring for your listener, but I enjoyed chopping it up with you.
This is old school podcast, man. We're talking old school NFL, right?
Yeah. Well, it was certainly old. We were definitely old school, weren't we?
All right. If you like that video, please like, share, and subscribe. I was supposed to have an interview coming up with Byron Chamberlain, two-time Super Bowl champ and all-pro tight end with the Denver Broncos and the Minnesota Vikings. But we ran into technical difficulties with the interview, and so that's going to be delayed a little bit. Keep an eye out for that. I've also got my take coming up with the draft in a couple of weeks, and I'm going to list the order in which I would draft the 5 quarterbacks expected to go in round 1. This is QB Unfiltered, and remember, always throw the ball short to guys who can score. See ya.